Hi everyone, and welcome to video number 8 on the American West. And this one, ladies and gentlemen, it's all about gold. Always believe in your soul. You got the power to know you're indestructible. The fantastic Spandau Ballet from 1983. Yep, this video, ladies and gentlemen, it's all about the gold miners. There's gold in them there hills. That's what they used to say. And from 1848, that was true. Gold was discovered. Sutter's Fort, James Marshall, discovered gold in California. And this was to prove to be very significant, key word, significant for the development of the American West. Hopefully, this video will help to explain why. Think back to video number 5. We looked at the push and pull factors, why people moved west. Well, over in the east, remember, there were problems. People were struggling. And then this news of gold filters across America, brought by the mountain men and the traders across to the east of America. Gold has been discovered. For many people who are struggling, it acts as a magnet to draw them across, which leads to the gold rush of 1849. For some of you maybe who follow American football, there is a team still called the San Francisco 49ers. The miners were known as the 49ers. San Francisco, the city, basically emerged from the gold. So people move to California. They see it as a chance to get rich, especially if they get there early and get a lot of gold, and gold of a high quality, or as we say today, high in carat. That's how we judge the quality of gold. It's judged in carat. Leads us to that old joke, ladies and gentlemen. What pudding do gold miners like to eat? Answer, carrot cake. Sorry about that. Very poor joke. Let's get back to the serious stuff. Now, the gold rush. Let's have a look at California before gold is discovered, putting the Native Americans or the Indian tribes in California to one side. Let's not include them in the figures. There's 1848, there's about 15,000 people living in California. 1852, 4 years later, 225,000. 1855, 300,000. There's a huge influx of people from the east of America, Europe, Britain in fact, tin miners from Cornwall fancy their chances of going abroad, Mexico and China, even China. Now, 1852 over in China there was a famine. People are being pushed out. Remember those push factors. 1851, there's 2,000 Chinese people in California. 1852, there's 20,000. 10 times increase in 1 year because of the famine in China and the attraction of the gold. So the gold rush from 1848 onwards leads to change in the state, eventually the state of California. Now, who is arriving? Well, first of all, it's mainly men. It's men who are going. Why do they go? Because they believe the stories. Often these stories were false. That if you go to California, you will make your fortune. You will, it's almost like winning the lottery today. You will become very, very rich by finding the gold. Now, some of the early miners, or prospectors as they were called, if they got there early, maybe they did get a lot of gold. But for the vast majority, ladies and gentlemen, this idea of get rich quick was not reality. Most of the miners ended up working very, very hard, very long hours, very tough conditions, working the machinery for the mining companies, working their equipment, whether it's blasting the side of mountains or whatever. And for all that work, $3 a day. Well, that's not winning the lottery, ladies and gentlemen. So that there was a difference between the attraction, come and get rich, and the reality, you won't get rich. So, thousands of people arrive looking for the gold. Well, the early gold, either found on the surface or in streams or on the riverbed. And they basically used something a bit like this. Now, this is just a normal colander. They had something that was a pan. They called it panning. They called panning for gold. They would put it in, swill it all round, and hopefully gold nuggets would remain in their pan. Some people got lucky. Most people didn't. Most people ended up working the equipment. The long toms, the rockers, the blasters. That was the reality. Now, what was life like in these new mining camps, which eventually some became mining towns? Well, the answer is in one word. Life was tough. Why? Well, remember I said it was mainly men who were there. The conditions in the mining camps were rough, tough. There was not much comfort, not much stability. There was hardly any family or community to sort of ground everyone and try and develop a community. There was hardly any of these. The police, law and order did not really exist in the mining camps, ladies and gentlemen. This led to problems. Yes, you'd have your mining camp with the men mining, either panning for gold, digging for gold, or using the equipment. Then you might get some shopkeepers opening up a store to sell provisions, essential food. Then you might get the saloon for the alcohol, the whiskey, which encouraged gambling. Then you'd get prostitution, all things which could cause problems, ladies and gentlemen, particularly problems with law and order. Well, we have the police to deal with problems with law and order. But what if there's no police? Can you see that there may well be a problem in the mining camps? So, let's have a look at some of the crimes. A new crime called claim jumping. Now, what's this all about? Well, many people are arriving looking for gold. Everyone gets a section of land, their claim. Now, if I'm on one section, on one bit of field, and there's someone else on another bit of field, and I'm working for hours and hours and getting no gold, but he's digging up gold, well, what's to stop me saying, I fancy a bit of his land? There's no police to stop me. I could use violence. I could use threats. I could use murder if I'm going to get away with it. Maybe people were desperate. So claim jumping, taking other people's claim or land, caused problems. Another problem? Racism. Remember, I've already mentioned about people from China coming over. Well, there was the idea in America at the time of sort of white superiority in a way. Remember Manifest Destiny? It's the right of Americans to go and take the land given to them by God. It's their destiny. 1850, the government introduced a foreign miners tax and say to the foreign miners from China, you have to pay your tax. Well, they didn't want to, so they say no. So they get attacked. And there's violence. And they're forced out, led by these vigilantes. I'll come to that word in a minute. So racism was a problem in the mining camps. Also, sickness, death. Remember I said terrible, tough living conditions, hard work, dirty, not very hygienic, a poor diet, poor nutrition, people not looking after themselves, not cooking properly. Put that all together and you get a high rate of sickness and death, which then the germs will spread and affect other people. So the mining camps were tough. The last problem, gang warfare. Remember, I've already said there's no real police. There's gambling going on. There's brothels being set up. there's money to be made. People will move in and try and organise it and take the money, which led to gangs. But then there might be other gangs, then that leads to gang warfare. The police, either they're not there, or they're ineffective, or they're outnumbered, or they've been bribed. Put that together, and you get violence, theft, murder. The mining camps, in a way, led to quite a few problems with law and order. Well, how could they deal with that? What possible answers could they have for law and order? Well, the miners themselves, the people there, they begin to take the law into their own hands. How? Why? Well, if there's no working system of a normal government or federal, to use the American word, system of courts or judges, the miners did it themselves. Excuse me. They set up committees. They wrote their own laws. They chose respected men and say, right, you can be in charge. They set up what were called miners' courts. And they took the decisions. They tried to implement justice. Now, sometimes these worked well. And they did stop some of the problems. Other times, though, the justice was not fair, which might lead to more problems, more disorder. But at least it was an attempt. Now, a few minutes ago, I said the word vigilante, vigilance committees. Well, that's a posh word, literally, for taking the law into your own hand. The police aren't there, the normal law is not there, so you become the law. Vigilance committees were set up. First of all, introduced by rich businessmen in San Francisco, the new city that's starting out. Well, they're afraid of these gangs taking all the money, frightening people away, harming their businesses. So they set up these vigilance committees to deal with the gangs. And they were successful. The idea spreads to the mining camps. Many of the miners were honest men and they're fed up with all these problems. So they get themselves together in a committee and say, we will act. They put up posters warning, do not come claim jumping, don't come round here causing problems with gambling and alcohol, we will deal with you. And they did. They sorted out the criminal activity. Now remember, as I've said, there's no real courts or judges or solicitors or lawyers. No, it's rough and ready justice. The bad people get arrested, they get put on trial, they're sentenced pretty quickly, and sometimes they're just taken out and hanged. Now, in some ways that would work. It acted as a warning for other bad people not to go there. Again, though, it's not perfect, because it could be used to settle scores against people you didn't like. Oh, it was him. Quick, let's go and get him. And again, that might lead to more trouble. But something had to be done. There was no real federal government system of law and order. California itself only became a state in 1850, after the US had defeated Mexico in the war. It took time to sort these problems out. It took time, in fact, to become a state. You had to have a population of 60,000 before you could even be considered. Of course, after the gold rush, as I've said earlier in the video, California has 300,000, so it could become a state, but it took time. Now, I hinted all the way through about the police. Well, of course, they would call them maybe sheriffs or United States Marshals. 1974, great song. I shot the sheriff, but I swear it was in self-defense. Well, how would they know if you just murdered the sheriff or just shot him in self-defense? If there's no system, there's no real courts, no lawyers, this is the problem. Sometimes the sheriffs weren't honest. They were bribed. Sometimes they just weren't there. They had a huge area of land to cover. Sometimes they were outnumbered by the baddies. So there were still problems in California to do with law and order, linking back to the gold rush. So let's just finish. The significance of the gold miners. Why were the gold miners so significant or important? Well, for the development of the American West, they were significant for these reasons. Number one, they encouraged more migration to the West, which is what the United States government wanted because it would boost the economy. Number two, it encouraged the growth in cities like San Francisco. Money, finance, wealth, jobs. People are moving and proper communities eventually will be formed. Number three, another reason why it was significant, it encouraged the development of building the railroad, the railway down to California. Very important for communications. Good communications and transport equals more wealth. Number four, it created wealth. Gold was a vital resource and it helped the United States become a world leader in trade. So it was a boost for America. One terrible thing was it helped to almost wipe out the Native American or Indian tribes that were based in California. Remember, racism, manifest destiny. So the gold miners were significant for the development of the American West. And in one particular area, the gold miners were very significant as regards law and order. Let's quickly recap. Number one, rapid growth, often mainly men. Unstable communities led to lawlessness, led to law and order maybe not working. Males, alone at first, often violent, drunk, gambling, often racist, led to more problems of law and order. Hardly any proper system of dealing with it. No federal government policing the law and order, which led to vigilante justice, as I've explained in the video. But this vigilante justice sometimes worked, sometimes created more problems, more lawlessness. So the gold miners had a huge impact on the concept of law and order over in California. And it was a tricky time for quite a few years before the system properly, keyword, developed. Development, keyword. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. We've looked across the last few videos at migration, the journey west, people who moved west, why they went west, where they went to, what the journey was like. Now we need to move slightly and examine, well, what actually happened when they got there? This new life that the settlers wanted, what happened? Let's examine the development and the problems facing these new settlers in the West. So that's coming next lesson. Next lesson, come on, next video. Till then, all the best. See you soon. Hope it's been useful. Bye now.